Farrell and I would play these word games when we were freshmen in the State House of Representatives. We'd sit there, and you know, when you're a freshman, there's a lot of waiting involved, right? And so you're sitting there, and we would play these word games, and that was one from 4 years ago. So thank you, Justin. But I want to thank Justin for more than that. You know, we are here, right here, in the shadow of a brand new piece of infrastructure, which is the U District line, the U link from Capitol Hill to the University of Washington. Executive Director of Transportation Choices Coalition, and then as a state legislator, pushing to make sure that we had a transportation package that worked for the entire state of Washington, but that included sound transit authorization for our region, not only so that we could connect our neighborhoods via transportation, but also so that we could bring affordable housing and early learning so that this becomes a community development agency. That's what Justin Farrell did single-handedly in the final days of the 2015 legislative session. Authoring legislation that keeps our state safe from oil spills that when oil is being transported by train, and also authoring legislation to raise the minimum wage, which we will pass at the ballot in November this year. I'm going to hear a little bit later on from another friend of mine and somebody that I view as a role model and a mentor, and that's our state's Attorney General, Bob Ferguson. Everyone in this room, if you like what we're doing here, you're really going to like his 43rd annual shrimp feed that's coming up. We'll find out when the shrimp feed is. It's coming up soon. You need to be there. Bob Ferguson has led as our state's Attorney General on so many things, chief among them consumer protection, but also making sure that our same-sex couples will not be discriminated against in businesses in Washington State. We are not going backwards on this. We established an Office of Civil Rights to make sure that all civil rights are addressed in our state. He's enforced labor standards and environmental protections, and Bob Ferguson is going to have another term as our Attorney General and an amazing political career for years and years to come. Give a round of applause to Bob Ferguson. Are really here, and I'm going to introduce our special guest in a second. Matthew McConaughey has come all the way up from California to speak in my campaign kickoff. It's amazing. But hey now. But I want to tell you guys why it's so awesome for me to be here with you guys tonight. As I officially announced, I filed paperwork with the Secretary of State this morning. Here's why I did it. Here's why I started this campaign 8 months ago, and we've been in the process of meeting with people, discussing with people, asking for support, gaining and earning support for months and months. But today was the day when it all came home and became real for me as I made that filing. And here's the reason why I did it. Because our country and our state and our community, now more than ever, need to commit and dedicate ourselves to the idea of inclusion. We have, more than ever before in my lifetime, and I bet the lifetimes of everyone in this room, we have a presidential election and a national debate where the very American idea of inclusiveness is at stake. And I got to tell you something, when you are a 3-time cancer surviving blind Iranian American from a mixed religion immigrant family, story, you know where I come from, but for those who don't or just meeting me for the first time, there's some new people here tonight. I want to tell you, my parents came here, they came to this country from Iran. They came here in search of economic opportunity and access to great higher education. My dad is what we call a double dog, a 2-time husky. And this won't get as many applause. My mom went to the University of Maryland for law school. I'll tell you, I was born in Baltimore, and shortly after I was born, I was diagnosed with, and many of you know this, diagnosed with a rare form of childhood eye cancer that took my eyesight in my left eye as just a newborn, and then took my eyesight at age 8 in my right eye as well, which is when I became completely blind. And so I often joke that that happened in 1989, meaning that all 8 years I could see did take place in the 1980s, meaning all my visual memories are from the 1980s, meaning everyone here, except for Matthew McConaughey, everyone here still looks like Cyndi Lauper and Boy George. So, I gotta tell you guys, we moved back here where my dad had gone to college, and I grew up not far from here, going to the public school system, and many of you have also heard me tell this story, but I have to tell it again, even for those who've heard it, because you won't know me without hearing where my belief in inclusion and inclusiveness came from, and it came from a very specific episode in my life. And that episode took place in 3rd grade at Somerset Elementary School, when all the kids want to go out and play, as they do, on the jungle gym, and on the playground, the monkey bars, the swing set during recess time. And, of course, my school's no different from any other school. All the kids would go out and do this, but I think knowing that I had recently become blind, and probably more importantly, knowing that my mother was a lawyer, the school wasn't too thrilled about me playing on the jungle gym 5 feet off the ground with the other kids. So what did they do? They kept me by the side of the school with the recess monitors and the teachers while the other kids were playing. And this happened a few days in a row, and I finally went home and I told my parents what happened. And I said to my parents, I feel excluded. And my mom was as indignant, my dad, both of them as indignant as I was. My mom took me to the school with her the next day. We went to the principal's office. And she took me there, and she had me sit in the room with the principal and her so that I could learn how to become an advocate for myself. And she said to the principal, I'm going to take my son to your school. I'm going to take him there on the weekend. I'm going to teach him how to get around the playground. I'm going to teach him how to get around the jungle gym. He's going to learn it as well as any other kid knows it. She said, it may happen that he may slip and fall. And it may even happen that he may slip and fall and break an arm. That's a fear that any mother has. But she said, I can fix a broken arm. I can never fix a broken spirit. That moment for me became the beginning of a lifelong belief in my own right as an American to be included. And to get out there in the jungle gym of life, whether it was in school or in the workplace or in government. But as I did that, as I traveled that journey, the journey that I sometimes call the road from Braille to Yale and beyond, I'll tell you, as I did that, I realized that there were so many other people all around me who for so many reasons were being excluded themselves, who were also being kept by the side of the school, who were also not being allowed on the playground, in our educational system, in our economic system, and yes, also in our political system. And I decided that it wasn't good enough for me to just fight for my own inclusion and just advocate for myself, but that I wouldn't be happy until no one felt that sense of exclusion. Till no one felt that feeling in the pit of your stomach when everyone else is involved and included and has opportunities that you don't have. And the day I realized that was the day I became a Democrat. And I had to advocate for others who weren't as fortunate as I was. And I'll tell you, you'll hear from Gavin in a second, an amazing story about when he noticed people being excluded from something as basic as the institution of marriage, what he did, and what a role model he's been to so many around the country on that issue. But I'll tell you, that's what it comes down to, folks. It's this idea that each and every one of us who has a home to live in, who's been able to receive an education, who's been able to go to college, who's been able to vote, and to be able to be at events like this and help to choose who our elected officials are, who's able to, as my parents were, be by my bedside when I was getting chemotherapy, those people who have paid sick leave and paid family medical leave and health insurance to be there with their loved ones. All those who are included, we have an obligation to look at who's been left out, who's been left behind, who's by the side of the school, not on the playground, and to do something about it. introduced the Washington Voting Rights Act in the State Senate, working with Bob Asagawa and others to make sure that people of color and communities of color are included as we draw our electoral maps. Legislation to make sure that no one has to go to work when they're not feeling well or need to take care of a loved one. And that's why I introduced legislation first of its kind, influenced by Gavin Newsom's book Citizenville, which uses technology, seeks to connect technology with democracy. Here's what it is. Right now, if you want to have your voice heard in Olympia, you either need to hire a well-paid lobbyist or take a full day off work so that you can go and say maybe 90 seconds worth of testimony. And we don't even have paid sick leave in most of this state, let alone paid testimony leave. Right? So my idea, inspired by John Oliver, was to allow people to use their mobile phones and laptops and computers to submit pre-recorded remote testimony so that everyone, whether they're able to drive or not, able to take a day off of work or not, whether they have money or not, can have their voice heard in the legislative process. And it's that kind of work that I want to bring to the job of Lieutenant Governor as President of the Senate to make the legislature more inclusive as well. So with your help, I will continue to fight hard to make our educational system more inclusive, our healthcare system more inclusive, our housing system more inclusive, our elections and our legislature itself more inclusive. I need your help to do it, and I appreciate so much that each and every one of you are here to help me do that work. And what I want to extend a particular word of thanks to Gavin Newsom, who is in the middle of his own campaign. All right? You guys know what he's running for? Governor of California! He's not an actor, and we think non-actors should be able to run for governor of California too. But I'll tell you, look, Gavin Newsom's such a rock star, you know that's why you're here, and I'll tell you, in every single way, whether it is inspiring me by writing about how technology, which is something I'm deeply passionate about, can connect with our democracy and make it fairer and more equal and more accessible to everybody. California's next governor, Gavin Newsom!
I should just drop the mic and get the heck back home. Thank you all very much for sticking around for the postscript after that. Right. I didn't expect that. I wouldn't have followed you. I would have changed the program. So let's just begin with the obvious, because about 9 out of 10 of you are wondering what the hell a lieutenant governor does. I know that, because I know a thing or two about what lieutenant governors do. I would think it was John Kerry, by the way, a few of you remember, was a lieutenant governor before he became a U.S. Senator. He said, here's the principal job description of a lieutenant governor in their respective states. You wake up in the morning, you pick up the paper, you go to the obituary section, and you read to see if the governor's name appears. If it doesn't appear, you go back to sleep. That's principally the job of lieutenant governor. But it doesn't have to be that way. And that's the spirit of why I'm here. Because we can do so much more, and we can do so much better. See, it's interesting. There's an interesting fact. There are 50 states, but there's 50 different job descriptions. Not every state has a lieutenant governor. The vast majority of states do. Every state is radically different. But at the end of the day, and I think it's pretty self-evident, you're here for a reason. You're here because you watched this young man outperform in every role he has had. Outperform consistently. He has stepped up and he stepped in and he recognizes one thing. Life, you don't have to be a bystander. You have agency. You can shape the future. Your expression's unique. His is. No one else has it. He's someone that's clearly learned from others, but he hasn't followed others. He's someone that's authentic. Someone that shares his passion, as Oliver Wendell Holmes once said, with action. and he steps into the fight. He's not talking about the way the world should be. He's actually leaning in and trying to manifest it, taking risks, saying what he thinks. Bold in presentation, bold in terms of his leadership. And I think that's a rare thing. And I imagine that's why you're all here, because you recognize we are desperate, writ large, in this country for leaders. And here's the good news.
Good one.
Those glasses are replaceable. But in addition to that good news, we are blessed. With the fact, you're going to have someone that's not only the head of the Senate out here, and by the way, that matters, particularly when the Senate's in the hand of that other party, because you've got all kinds of procedural opportunities. Boy, having the minority in that position of being president of the Senate is a huge tactical advantage in order to make sure bad things don't happen. And I'll tell you, in politics, unlike baseball, you don't get credit for saves. Sometimes they're equally as important as the things we do to achieve success proactively. That is one of the principal roles of being in the position that Cyrus will be in soon. But more important than anything else, what his past has demonstrated is his ability, and I talked to you about this today, his ability to take this position and exercise his voice and punch above his weight. To use, as he's described it, the megaphone. To use the bully pulpit. To exercise his moral voice. Because at the end of the day, I've been thinking a lot about this. I wrote this book, and I appreciate him mentioning it, called Citizen Bill. It was supposed to be a book about technology and government. It ultimately became a book about leadership. And I started looking at the most transformational leaders of our time. I think of people like Gandhi. I think of people like Mandela. I think of people like Martin Luther King. You think of people like Havel in Czechoslovakia. Fill in the blank. Cesar Chavez, whatever you want. You start thinking about their lives. I mean, just think about Dr. King's life, right? He never was ex-president Martin Luther King. Yet he transformed the world, certainly our country. Think about Gandhi. He said no every opportunity. When they said, you should get an elected office, young man. He said, well, with all due respect, I think I'm onto something here. You think of Mandela himself. I bet few of you can tell me all the extraordinary accomplishments in his one term in office as president. But none of you would be hard-pressed to tell me the extraordinary contributions he had in 27 plus years in jail and the rest of his life and what he represented. You just think back. My point is this, and it's for the young folks out there, it's important. You don't have to be something to do something. Cyrus gets that. He didn't wait to be this in order to do that. His entire life, he's recognized that he has a voice. And his voice is unique. And he's contributing that voice. And while it's, I think, well and good that he's in the Senate, it's well and good that he'll be your next lieutenant governor, he's a guy that's going to do something, I think, that is special. And that is, he's going to bring that moral authority into a position of formal authority. And that's the sweet spot. And that's where leadership can truly shine. And that's where leadership, well, success in that respect, that kind of leadership, it resonates outside of your state and jurisdiction. We are desperate to be inspired again. Here's a guy who leads a speech talking about inclusion. Not about growth, but growth and inclusion. And I think it was Plutarch, by the way. This is a wonderful thing. Cyrus, I don't know if you know this. In 50 AD, a Greek historian was born. Plutarch. He warned the Athenians 25 years later. He said the imbalance between the rich and the poor was the oldest and most fatal ailment of all republics. Think about that. Close to 2,000 years ago, an historian was warning the Athenians about income inequality, the lack of inclusion. Outside the issues associated with energy and climate change, this is the issue of our time. And I'll say this, I'm a guy that's proud to have 21 small businesses, about 1,000 employees. I say that not to impress you, but to impress upon you a strong bias to entrepreneurialism, which Cyrus has, a strong bias to the private sector. But one thing I know, businesses cannot thrive in a world that's failing. And unless we focus on growth and inclusion, we are in serious trouble. That's why it is absolutely critical that you get this young man in the position of Lieutenant Governor. You need him, we need him. We need his voice. We need this voice. Talk about inclusion. We need this voice to mind the gap between the haves and the have-nots. Not in a way that tears other people's down. I love it. I've been with Cyrus all day today. Not once did he begrudge other people's success. He wasn't going there blaming other folks for the world the way it is. He's saying we just have to step up our game. He was making the point today. He says, you know, I'm pro-job, which means I'm pro-business. But I recognize our fate is tied to the fate of others. Dr. King talked about it, right? We're all bound together by a web of mutuality. We're all in this together. And you can't, you know this, you can't live a good life in an unjust society. Everything he talked about was addressing the issue of injustice, focusing on social mobility, focusing on inclusion. We're all better off when we're all better off. How many times you heard Cyrus talk about the Declaration of Interdependence, right? It's not even, I heard the president yesterday, it was so wonderful, but he talked about interconnectedness. It's interdependence. We rise and fall together. Many parts, right? But one body. When one part suffers, we all suffer. That was Father Cause at Santa Clara University. Reminded me of that. So look, I'm up here because this young man matters. And I'm up here because I'm glad you care. And I'm also up here to make one final and fundamental point, and then I'm going to ask you for a couple things before I step down. I was meeting with someone the other day. This was an amazing meeting. We were talking about leadership. A guy you probably heard of, Sir Ken Robinson. And he was telling me a wonderful story. He said he wanted to describe leadership. We were talking about all the themes of technology, globalization, and how the industrial economy's run out of gas. It's in atrophy. It's stalled. Top-down organizations are giving way to something radically different. It's all about bottom-up, not top-down. And he starts telling me a story about Death Valley. Most of you know what Death Valley is, California. It's the hottest and driest place on planet Earth. And in 2004, something rather significant happened that folks hadn't seen in years. About 8 inches of rain fell overnight in Death Valley. This was all over the national news. A few months later, in the spring of 2005, entire valley was carpeted with wildflowers. Ken said, you know what, Gavin said, it turns out Death Valley wasn't dead after all. It was dormant. He said the seeds of possibility had been planted years and years before, waiting for the right conditions to come along. And he says when the right conditions come along, success becomes irresistible. His point about leadership was this: it's not command and control, settling down that vision. It's about climate control. It's about creating the right conditions where success becomes irresistible. That's the job of a leader. He understands that innately. Creating the right conditions where you can live your lives out loud, where you can be fully expressive, where your expression, again, that's unique just like Cyrus's, can be respected and embraced. And we're living in a world where folks are working politically to divide you in order to advance their political agenda and their political careers. And here we are, and we're talking about pluralism. Here we are, this young man's talking about inclusion, talking about what unites us together, not what divides us. Bill Clinton loves to talk about all our interesting differences, right? But at the end of the day, we're at our best when we unite around the things that bind us together. And you think about what's wrong with the rest of the world, it's nations being torn apart because of racial, religious, ethnic controversies that have fueled fanaticism, fueled terror. But you come to the United States, we're still the world's largest democracy. And I'd like to think the world still looks to us to see that it's possible to live together and advance together across every conceivable magical difference. And you look around this room, you're doing just that. And I'll just remind you what I talked to Cyrus about today. It ain't a football. It's a Fabergé egg. Don't take it for granted. Celebrate it and cherish it. Invest in it. That's our godsend. That's where social stability comes in. That's our strength. That's what makes us great today. Is at our best, we don't tolerate our diversity. We celebrate it. I'm going to close real quick with this. I don't want to bring this up, but I appreciate Cyrus did. You know, I got deep into some of these issues. When I was mayor, I decided I didn't need formal authority to start marrying same-sex couples. I went, what the heck? I got to live one life. All 4,036 couples from 46 states in 6 countries got married. It was amazing. You know, it's just one of those things. You know, at the time in 2005, we weren't even debating civil unions. We'd barely gotten through domestic partnerships. And folks thought we'd never see it in our lifetime. And it's just a way of saying 2 quick things. In your own lives, forget politics now, in your own life, I think some of us sometimes often overstate what we can do in a year, but we wildly understate capacity to do great things 5, 7, 10 years. You know, Michelangelo was right. So the biggest risk in life is not that we aim too high and miss it, so we aim too low and reach it. He is not in peril of aiming too low. This guy is moving. He is on the move. But here's my ask. He needs your help. And one thing I know about the future, it's not just something to experience. It doesn't just happen. You got to make it happen. You've got to manifest it. Future's not in front of you, it's inside of you. And his future is dependent upon your willingness to help manifest this effort and this agenda over the course of the next few months. You're here for a reason, not just because you want to enjoy a nice beer and some company. You're here because you believe it. But he needs you not just today, needs you not just through the primary in August, but he needs you to run the 100-yard dash, not the 90-yard dash, and get through November. I know a lot of you written checks, put your credit card down, you put a few bucks in. Your Attorney General is going to talk a little bit more in a minute about what else you can do.
You're doing great. Keep going.
But I want to encourage you. I want to encourage you to do whatever you can before you leave by doing just a little bit more. Don't take this moment for granted. Don't take Cyrus for granted. This is not going to be an easy race. He's got 2 other very well-known Democrats that have got a few bucks, and they're going to be working their tails off, and he's got Republicans on the other side. So don't let him down, and don't let his lieutenant governor from a small suburb of Washington State, California, down either. Because we're looking for inspiration, we're looking for new ideas, we're looking for your passion, we're looking for this young man's ascendancy and success. So with that, on behalf of a grateful state, California, keep up the extraordinary work up here in Washington State and get this guy elected Lieutenant Governor.